Well, good morning, everyone. It's good to be with you on this Lord's Day, and I thank you all for coming out. Today's lesson is called After Death, What Then? And I remember when I was a child and I went to my first funeral. Back east, we had a wakes the night before the funeral and a viewing of the body, and it seems like you were there for like 3 hours. And I probably went to more wakes and funerals than the average kid because my dad was a preacher and he was older, so a lot of their friends and relatives were and associates were dying off. And so I've had I probably think of death very frequently. And I believe that's kind of healthy because it keeps you on your edge, knowing that your death is coming one day and you need to be prepared for it. And I could say much more about that, but we're going to go on. Look at this next slide. What happens when you die? You know, maybe you die in a terrible car accident, or maybe you have you're in surgery and things just didn't go as planned and you didn't make it. But we all have an expiration date. But what really matters is not the date that you're born and the date that you die, but that dash in the middle, right? That dash in the middle is what really matters. And this time side of life is preparation for eternity. We're put in this world not so that we'll be just happy and content with this world and not want anything else. No. We're to desire the heavenly, knowing that we're just pilgrims passing through. And so, first thing we're going to deal with is what happens to your body when you die, okay? And some of this stuff might be a little gross, but a lot of us have wondered and maybe even did a little research on this. Just seconds after death, your brain activity surges and then stops. Then your body temperature starts to cool down until room temperature is reached. Minutes after death, your cells begin dying due to a lack of oxygen and then start to break down and leak, beginning the process of putrefaction. Hours after death, what happens? The body releases the remaining urine and feces. Calcium builds up in the muscles, causing them to tense. And this is called rigor mortis, and it lasts about 36 hours. Your skin shrinks as it dries out, making your hair and nails seem like they're growing, but really it's your skin's dried out and dehydrated, so it just seems that way. Gravity pulls the blood down and the body changes color, making light skin look pale with red splotches. What happens days after your death to your body? Days after death, you turn green in spots because enzymes in your organs start digesting themselves, usually with help of bacteria, and the body releases chemicals like putrescine. I didn't even know that was a real word. Putrescine and cadaverine, causing the body to smell. Remember, Jesus was warned that Lazarus, by now, after 4 days, the body would now be stinking. Weeks after death, what happens? Bugs such as maggots start to eat you. They can eat 60% of your body within the first week. You turn purple and then black as bacteria continues to digest your body. After about 4 or 5 weeks, your hair, nails, and teeth all fall out. Months after death, most of the internal organs have become liquid. They will swell and the body will burst. If your body is left at 50 degrees Fahrenheit, it will take about 4 months for your soft tissue to decompose until just your skeleton is all that is left. Okay? So, again, all this matters on the temperature and the moisture and all that kind of thing. And we go through a process of preparing our bodies in the United States so that some of these things slow down. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But on the next slide, I forgot to put the hash marks there, Ryan. There's a definition that we find in the Bible, which was our scripture reading about what death is. Death is a separation. It's a separation of your spirit or soul from your body. In James 2 and verse 26, for the body without the spirit is dead. Notice it didn't say that the spirit dies. The body without the spirit is dead. So faith without works is dead also. The Bible does not say that the spirit is dead without the body. It says the body is dead without the spirit. You live on. And there's a plethora of verses that you can look up, and you can do word studies on everywhere the word spirit is found in the Old and New Testament, and everywhere the word soul is found in the Old and New Testament. And if you can figure out the distinction between each, then you're smarter than I am, because I've spent hours and hours, and every time I think I got it figured out, there's another verse that throws me a curveball. And part of the problem is that sometimes the word spirit and soul are used interchangeably. Now, definitely sometimes they're used distinctly different, but for our purposes, we're going to refer to them as that inner being that's going to continue to exist, okay? We read in Luke 8 and verse 55 how an example of how that in the scriptures, how that when your spirit leaves your body, death occurs. The body dies. It says in Luke 8:55, then her spirit returned and she rose immediately, and he commanded that she be given something to eat. So when Jesus resurrected this young lady, her spirit came back to her body. And that's what a resurrection is a dead body coming back to life. And so there's the spirit returning and life returns, physical life, to the dead body. But when the spirit leaves or departs, then, of course, physical death occurs. In Genesis 35 and verse 18, and so it was as her soul was departing, for she died, that she called his name Ben-Oni, but his father called him Benjamin. So you have Rebecca there, Rachel there dying, the mother of Benjamin. And notice how her soul was departing. And then we have Luke 12 and verse 20. But God said to him, fool, this night your soul will be required of you. Then whose will those things be which you have provided? So you've got your soul or your spirit departing your body, and that causes physical death. Okay, what happens when you die? Continued. There's a departure. In 2 Timothy 4 and verse 6, for I am already being poured out as a drink offering, and the time of my departure is at hand. So there's a departure from this world. Go back a slide, please. Yeah, departure right there in the middle. 2 Timothy 4:6. And of course, we don't know what a spirit or soul looks like. It's in the spiritual world, not physical. So this is just an artist's depiction of, of course, your spirit and your soul is not going to look like your physical body, and you're not going to have clothes and stuff like that. So this is just an artist's depiction. So notice that departure in 2 Timothy 4 and verse 6. And then the Bible refers to death as a sleep. And of course, your body appears to be sleeping. In John 11 and verse 11, these things he said, and after that he said to them, our friend Lazarus sleeps, but I go that I may wake him up. And then he clarifies in that same context that he's talking about he's not just resting, he's dead. And so the Bible refers to sometimes the dead body as being in a sleep because that's the way it appears. And then for some people, not everyone. For some people in Revelation 14:13, the Bible refers to death as a rest. Then I heard a voice from heaven saying to me, "Write, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Yes, says the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors and their works follow them." All right, then we get to the next slide. In the next slide, the Bible tells us in Genesis chapter 3 and verse 19 that it's a reference to creation, how the Adam was formed out of the dust. And in this verse, it talks about how that we're going to go back to dust. The elements make our physical bodies, and our physical bodies are going to go back to the elements. In the sweat of your face you shall eat bread. This is God speaking to Adam. Till you return to the ground, for out of it were you taken. For dust you are, and to dust you shall return. Now, when you take the average human body and you look at what it's made of, you can break it down into various elements by percentage. Your body's made of 65% oxygen, 18% carbon, 10% hydrogen, 3% nitrogen, and the rest of the other elements make up about 4%. 1.5% calcium, 1% phosphorus, 0.35% potassium, 0.25 sulfur, 0.15 sodium, 0.15% chlorine, 0.05 magnesium, 0.0004% iron, 0.00004% iodine, and your body contains trace elements such as silicon, magnesium, fluorine, copper, zinc, arsenic, and aluminum. And look at this next slide. Have you ever wondered how much all your elements of your body are worth? Am I the only one that's ever thought about that? Huh? I guess I'm a little weird. Anyway, if you ever wondered how much all those elements are worth, I hope you're not disappointed, because the average person is worth about $1. $1. All that material, all those elements is worth about $1. Okay? Just the way it is. Let's go on. Does everyone rest in peace? You know, we see people pass away and they put R.I.P. I never did like that, because not everyone, people assume, oh, they're finally resting. You know, they struggled with this ailment or this disease, and now they're at peace. And they put rest in peace. And sometimes you see that on tombstones and things. But not everybody's resting in peace. Friends, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, not everybody rests in peace. Revelation 14 and verse 13 is what we read earlier. But if you back up to verse 11, you see the other side of the story. And the smoke in their torment ascends forever and ever, and they have no rest day or night. Who doesn't have rest day and night? It goes on to say, those who worship the beast in his image and whoever receives the mark of his name. A reference to those who have lived an unrighteous lifestyle. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are those who keep the commandments of God and faith of Jesus. In other words, the righteous that are obedient, faithful and obedient to Christ. What does it say? Verse 13, then I heard a voice from heaven saying to me, "Write, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord." Blessed are the dead who die in the Lord. Not outside of the Lord, but in the Lord. From now on, yes, says the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors and their works follow them. Only if you die in the Lord do you get rest after physical death occurs. Your soul or spirit is at rest. But if you die outside of the Lord, you're unrighteous, you're unprepared. There is no rest. You see that you have torment forever and ever, and there's no rest day or night. Well, let's talk about after death, how's your body prepared for viewing? You know, sometimes we have wakes, or we have the family views the body. Sometimes they'll have an open casket before the burial. And this is what happens. Your body is cleaned with disinfectant spray. Number 2, your body's embalmed. What does that entail? All bodily fluids are removed, and this delays decomposition. Special embalming fluids are pumped through your carotid or femoral artery, while blood is drained from corresponding veins. This is called arterial embalming. All your hollow organs are punctured to drain out all the nasty stuff. And the cavity embalming fluid is inserted to kill bacteria and solidify the hollow organs. This is called cavity embalming. If your body was badly injured, maybe mangled in a car wreck or something, then sometimes they do some level of reconstruction, and then they place eye caps under your eyelids, and your eyelids are secured shut. Cotton is placed up your nasal passages and down your throat. Your jaw is secured shut either by string sutures or by brads. Your body thoroughly is washed and your hair is shampooed. Your nose and ear hairs are trimmed if they need trimmed. And you get your last manicure. Moisturizing cream is applied to protect your skin from refrigeration, because just like you put your chicken or your steak in the refrigerator and it's uncovered, it turns a little different colors. Well, that will happen to you if you don't have that moisturizing cream on in the refrigeration. Light makeup is then applied. Your hair is styled. You're dressed in what you or your family wanted you to wear. And then you're refrigerated or placed in the casket. All right, what about your soul or spirit? What happens to that? Where do we go? Our body is going, we just talked about what happens to it. Well, where do you, the real you, the inner you, your soul or spirit go? In Luke 16, we read about the story of the rich man and Lazarus. And we're going to break it down into sections and see if we can learn some lessons from that story that Jesus told. This is a true story. Some people will call it a parable, but because specific names are mentioned, I believe that it's speaking of a real event. But needless to say, Jesus never used an untruth to illustrate a truth. So whether it be a parable or a true individuals, I don't know for sure, but it is a story that Jesus wanted us to learn some things from. There was a certain rich man, see, that's very specific, who was clothed in purple and fine linen and fared sumptuously every day. He was wealthy, okay? He lived life of physical bliss. Verse 20, but there was a certain beggar named Lazarus, full of sores, who was laid at his gate. Now, why would they lay this beggar at this rich man's gate? Because they're hoping that the rich man will have a little mercy on him and give him some aid, physical aid for his needs, like food and clothing and maybe medical attention. Verse 21, desiring to be fed with the crumbs which fell from the rich man's table. Moreover, the dogs came and licked his sores. So it was that the beggar died and was carried by the angels to Abraham's bosom. And the rich man also died and was buried, and being in torments in Hades. So we learn from verse 22, when the rich man and Lazarus died, Lazarus must have been, he was a righteous man, because angels escorted him to the Hadean realm. Now, Hades is the Greek equivalent of the Old Testament word Sheol. It simply means the place of disembodied spirits. And that's where we all go after we physically die on earth, while we are awaiting the great resurrection day and judgment day. And so when you die, we're going to learn that immediately you know your final destination, because you're either going to, your soul or spirit's going to be escorted to the nice side, the delightful, joyous side of the Hadean realm, called paradise or Abraham's bosom, which is a place of comfort. Or your soul or spirit is going to go to the bad side of the Hadean realm, a place of torment, where you're going to be in agony. So there's two divisions in Hades, this abode of disembodied spirits. The righteous are placed in a place of peace and comfort in paradise or Abraham's bosom, which is sometimes called the third heaven. Paradise is defined as a garden of great beauty or a place of ideal beauty and loveliness. Christ went to paradise. Remember when he died, he told the thief on the cross in Luke 23:43, "Truly I say to you, today you shall be with me in paradise." This is the good side of Hadean realm that we want to go to if we are alive, if we die before Christ returns. Abraham's bosom is just an expression of God's approval, okay? Third heaven is also called paradise in 2 Corinthians 12, 1 through 4. And then there's the other side of Hades. The wicked are in torment, separated from the righteous by a great gulf. You know, the righteous are separated from the unrighteous by this great gulf that you can't cross. Imagine like the Grand Canyon, okay? You can't get from one side to the other. This place of torment is called in the Greek Tartaro, Tartaroo, or Tartarus, Tartarus. Luke 16 describes this place of torment as a place of conscious suffering in fire. 2 Peter 2 and verse 4 further describes Tartaro as a place of restriction, darkness, a place reserved for where you are held for judgment. In 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 4, this word is used. "For if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell," or Tartaro, Tartaroo, "and committed them to pits of darkness reserved," or detained or held for judgment. And so those are the two different compartments of the Hades. And there's a place for the righteous and a place for the unrighteous. Let's talk about, are we conscious when we die? And being in torments, we carry on with Luke 16, picking up in verse 23. Being in torments in Hades, he, talking about the rich man, he lifted up his eyes and saw Abraham afar off and Lazarus in his bosom. So he could see what was going on, and he could see what was going on the righteous side of the other side of the gulf. And look, he's conscientious enough to cry out. In verse 24, "Then he cried and said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus that he may dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue." You know, he's in agony. "For I am tormented in this flame." Okay? We usually think of Gehenna hellfire as the place that has the lake of fire, eternal damnation. Well, that is a description of Gehenna, but also it's a description of this place of torment. Well, let's look at, where does our body go? Okay? Let's look at the next slide. Where does our body go? Some people might find this interesting. If your body is prepared for viewing, burial, and you have a vault that you put the casket in, that average in the United States costs, it depends on which state and which city, but on average, $9,995 according to 2023 statistics. Then if you decide that you are going to have a burial plot and you have to purchase that burial plot, and then you're going to have a headstone, and then they have to dig the dirt out, put the vault in, put your casket in the vault, and put the dirt back up on top of it, and you've got a tombstone, a headstone, and that burial plot. That's an additional $5,100 average in the United States as of 2023. So the total average cost of viewing, burial, vault, single burial plot, headstone, and interment is $15,095. That's not cheap, is it? Well, let's go back to Luke 16. Where do we go? Spiritually, our spirit or soul, we see in Luke 16, goes to the Hadean realm. Notice how we continue to understand how that you're conscious after death. You're aware of what's going on. In verse 25, but Abraham said, and Abraham's on the good side, paradise, okay? Said, son, remember that in your lifetime you received good things, and likewise Lazarus evil things. He said, remember, he's conscious. But now he is comforted, and you are tormented. And besides all this, between us and you there is a great gulf fixed, so that those who want to pass from here to you cannot, nor can those from there pass to us. What do we learn from this text? After death, there's no second chances. We're going to, when we get to the judgment next week, you're going to be judged by the deeds done in your body. You're outside of the body in the Hadean realm, the place of disembodied spirits. You're not going to be judged by things there. Your fate is sealed. There's no second chances. This is just the holding tank, if you will, while you're waiting for Jesus' return, the great resurrection day and judgment. The gulf is fixed. You can't cross from one side to the other. Your fate is sealed. So you know 1 second after physical death, you know where you're going to be in eternity. I like to say it like this. Paradise is pretty great, but it's not going to be as good as heaven. And torment in Hades is pretty bad, but it's not going to be as bad as Gehenna hellfire. Let's move on to verse 27. Then he said, I beg you therefore, Father, that you would send him to my father's house. The rich man wants Abraham to send Lazarus back from the dead to his family's house, his father's house, to warn his brothers. Look at this. For I have 5 brothers, that he may testify to them, lest they also come to this place of torment. After death, you're going to want to be evangelistic too. You're going to wish that you'd warned someone else. If you wind up on the bad side, you're going to wish that you had warned others so they wouldn't be there. He's wanting to be evangelistic. He's wanting to warn his brothers. But as we're going to learn, he can't. We've already learned that there's 3 things in torment that we need to have in the church today. The first thing is a plea for mercy. Now's the time to get right with God, to make things right so that you can have mercy, not after you die. A proper understanding of material possessions. Possessions are, you can't take with you into eternity. Possessions are, look at them as just things to facilitate life here on earth. And you should have an idea, a mindset that you should not let your possessions possess you, but you need to possess your possessions. You need to be in control of them instead of them being in control of you. There's something more important than earthly possessions, and it's your eternal destiny. And you got to get the cart before the horse. You got to get the horse before the cart. Sorry. Not the cart before the horse. And then a real concern for the lost. We need to have that in the church. Not just after life is over if we find ourselves on the wrong side of that gulf in the Hadean realm. Let's look at verse 29 of Luke 16. Abraham said to him, they have Moses and the prophets. Let them hear them. And he said, no, Father Abraham, but if one goes to them from the dead, they will repent. But here's what Abraham says. But he said to him, if they do not hear Moses and the prophets, neither will they be persuaded, though one rise from the dead. Right now, we have the Old and New Testament scriptures to tell us what we need to do to be prepared for eternity. And if you won't listen to them, there's no dead person coming back to tell you what you need to do to be saved. You have the Old and New Testament scriptures. We need to hear them. We learn from this text that you can't contact the dead, and the dead cannot communicate with us. Verse 27 through 31. After death, you can't warn your loved ones. This idea that you can communicate with the living after you die, that's foreign from the Bible. You have God doing a miracle to allow Samuel to be conjured from the dead, the Hadean realm, to give a message to Saul, but that was because God did a miracle. And that seems to be only one occurrence. And then in Luke 16, we learn where the dead are. Where are the dead? Where do we go spiritually, our spirit or soul, when we die? According to Luke 16, the dead are conscious. According to Luke 16, they're not at their final destination, which would be their eternal home, either everlasting eternal bliss or everlasting and eternal destruction. In Luke 16, we learned that the dead are in an intermediate state, in the Hadean realm, the place of disembodied spirits. And it's here that we're going to stop today. Next week, we're going to talk about what happens next. We're going to talk about, we're even going to go over cremation. A lot of people have questions about cremation. But in closing, I want you to consider the words of Solomon when he wrote Ecclesiastes. Remember when God gave him his request, he asked for wisdom, and he used that wisdom. God gave him also wealth and power, and he used all those resources to experiment and try to find out things about life and try to find out what's the most important thing in life. And here's what he says in Ecclesiastes 2, verse 10 and 11. And whatsoever mine eyes desired, I kept not from them. I saw it, I want it, I got it. Not my heart from any joy, for my heart rejoiced in all my labor, and this was my portion, all my labor. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had wrought, and on the labor that I had labored to do, and behold, all was vanity and vexation of spirit. All was vanity and vexation of spirit, and there was no profit under the sun. And then you come to the end of the book of Ecclesiastes, and here's what he says in chapter 12, verse 13. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. He did experiments to see if he could find satisfaction upon the earth, and he saw that it was vanity and vexation. And what he comes to the end of the conclusion of what life is all about, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Are you fearing God? Are you keeping his commandments? That's why you exist. That's why I exist. I'm going to leave you with two other passages. In Luke 12, 16 through 21, we learn about another rich man. A rich man that put things of this earth before things that prepared him for eternity. It says in verse 16, and he spake a parable unto them, saying, the ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentifully. He became prosperous. And he thought within himself, saying, what shall I do? Because I have no room where to bestow my fruits. He said, this is what I will do. I will pull down my barns and I will build greater, and there will I bestow all my fruits and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, thou hast much goods laid up for many years. Take thine ease, eat, drink, and be merry. And that's what most Americans are trying to do. They're trying to find prosperity. They want to eat, drink, and be merry. And they're missing the very purpose for their existence. But God said unto him, thou fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. Then whose shall those things be which thou hast provided? You can't take it with you. So is he that layeth up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. So you either lay up treasures here on earth or you lay up treasures in heaven. Jesus said in Mark 16, 15, and 16, go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. He that believeth and is baptized shall be saved. He that believeth not shall be condemned. If you have need to obey the Savior's invitation, will you come as together we stand and sing?